Hey, welcome to this week's episode of M3, our midweek micro message, where we stop to talk about everyday topics from a biblical perspective. And this week, I want to just take a moment and talk about assumptions and perceptions. When we go to the Old Testament, we take a look at 1 Kings chapter 19. We come across a man by the name of Elijah. Elijah was one of the greatest prophets in the Old Testament. And it's because he stood up to Jezebel at a time when no one else would. And when we take a look at 1 Kings chapter 19, we see that Elijah is at a point of despair. And he starts to isolate himself. He runs away. And he does so, and he goes into isolation because he feels like he is the only one left in the nation of Israel that is still faithful to God. And what he didn't know is that God had hid more than 700 prophets away, just waiting for Israel to return to a proper relationship with him. But when Elijah does this, he makes an assumption, right? And he assumes that because of his obedience to God and the wickedness of the people, because they were worshiping, the Baal gods, he made an assumption that everybody hated him. And in reality, Elijah's perception of himself was based on the assumptions of other people, right? What he thought people thought about him. And this is important because sometimes we'll do the same thing. Solitude and having time by ourselves is necessary. That's true. But when we look and we search the scriptures, it also warns us to be careful about how much time we spend alone because it leads to a state of despair. And when we're in a state of despair, we don't always seek God. We don't pray. We don't seek Him for His guidance. We don't bond with other believers because, we think that if we self-isolate like Elijah did, then we believe sometimes, we convince ourselves that I'm going to protect my sanity. If I just stay away from them, if I ignore them, if I just isolate myself, then I won't have to fool with it. But there's a twist to that. See, unlike Elijah, we shouldn't be controlled by people's assumptions, perceptions, and opinions of us. I mean, when we think about it, even simple things can cause us to assume things that aren't true. I'm going to give you an example. We had an event around Christmas time here at the house, and we had all these leftover red Solo cups. And I don't like wasting stuff, so I use them, right? He's like, okay, man, where you going with a red Solo cup? Check this out. A red Solo cup is synonymous with the house party and the backyard barbecue, the family reunion. It's so synonymous, and remember, we're talking about assumptions and perceptions. It's so anonymous that on most occasions, if we see someone sipping from a red cup, we automatically assume that they're drinking alcohol. Simple example, but in a lot of cases, it's true. In other words, sometimes we allow people's assumptions and perceptions of us to get into us so deeply that it changes our character and we wind up altering our identity because of what we believe someone perceives of us or some assumptions that have been made about us. So 3 things real quick before I go. Here's the first one. We know this, but sometimes we don't live it. It's impossible to control how everybody sees you. Some people are going to like you, other people won't. That's okay. Number 2, people's perceptions are always, I'm going to say it again, always based on their experiences, their biases, and the limited information that they have about you. And this is probably the most important one. And I want you to think about what I've shared so far. Sometimes people won't see the real you because they're looking at the red Solo cup and they're wondering what you have in it. Think about that. Yeah, I'm stuck on the Solo cup, but my point is this. People are looking at everything else about you but you, and they have limited information about you, so they don't know you. And because a person doesn't know you, they're going to have their own perception, and they're going to make some assumptions about you. That's okay. Listen, here's the thing. It's normal to be concerned about people's perceptions, but don't let people's perception of you become an obsession for you. In other words, don't be so fixated on it that, I'm struggling because I think this person feels this, or they think this about me, or people think that about me, or all of those other things. That's garbage. Throw it out the window, right? So you say, okay, what do I do? It's one simple key. And this is something that we have to work at routinely, right? And that is I have to find how to balance how I'm perceived, how you're perceived, while staying true to ourselves. We have a sense of awareness of what's going on around us, what people may be saying and thinking. We don't surrender, but we're aware this is what someone may be thinking. We don't even have to take it to them and present it in any other way. The real thing to do, or the correct thing to do, is just remain true to ourselves and don't allow someone's assumptions and perceptions of us to overtake us. One quick thing before we go, March 8th, we're going to resume our women's study on Ephesians up on the hill. On that same day, March 8th, 9:30 a.m., March 8th, 9:30 a.m., we're having our second iteration of Man, We Need to Talk. Got some special things that we want to do during that event. No agenda, we're just talking, but I do have a little something that I want to do. And as always, you're invited to worship with us each and every Sunday morning. We'd love to see you in person, 10 a.m. up on the hill. And if you can't make it, you can always find us on Facebook. We go live, give or take, around 10 o'clock each Sunday morning. This has been your midweek micro message. Stay warm, stay safe. We'll see you next week.